Hello again everybody, Melth here, back with my second ever game on the Global League. I thought that this match would be interesting for a few reasons, despite being a fairly short one. For one, the COs are switched from my game against Starduster. Now I am playing as Max against Eagle. So if you are one of the many people out there wearing a What Would Melth Do bracelet, this video is for you. A second reason I wanted to show this match is that I think it's on a very unusual map. One that I hadn't really seen the like of before in my few previous games. It's apparently a rather controversial map, pulling down something less than a 3 out of 10 rating. So in fact, calling controversial might be flattering it. Hated is more like it, maybe. I think that's by far the lowest rated Global League map that I've seen. I think that there are a few reasons for that low rating. One of them is that although at first glance the map might look pretty big, in practical terms it's very small. The bases are very close together, and there are basically no terrain impediments in between them. So effectively, it's almost as if your bases were right next to the enemy ones. Take a look at the top front of the map, for example. A tank built from Black Hole's base there can drive an attack out to the highlighted squares. Well, guess what? A tank built from one of Orion Star's bases can go out and attack the exact same square. So basically, there is no middle ground. Almost the entirety of the map is within immediate striking distance of one player's base or the other, or both. The very center of the map is kind of an exception to that, but some games don't even have any action there. So after this game I watched a few replays of high-level players in this map, and even for them, a lot of the game is just back and forth of units immediately counterattacking each other right off the base. Which is just messy and goofy and doesn't look or feel very tactical at all. Nothing terribly clever about driving a freshly built unit out and shooting the enemy you know is there before they can scout you. Another problem with the map is that there's also a really strong second player advantage. I think it's the most lopsided that I've ever seen on a Global League map. Yeah, 45 to 55%. My opponent is going second, and I will say it didn't feel great to know I was facing a disadvantage simply because of the coin flip having made me go first. Anyway, the third reason that I wanted to show this match was because I thought I came up with an unusual and interesting strategy. So, I had an aggressive strategy in mind, and I wanted to use a lot of tanks and recons for it, and for that reason I picked Max, who's perfect for that style of play. As you've heard me say in both my single player and multiplayer videos, he is a very formidable CO. Because almost every single unit in the game is a direct combat unit, he basically has a 20% attack bonus to everything except for his infantry. His artillery are really bad, and that does hurt him on some maps, but you can usually play without artillery if you need to. Theoretically, his other indirect units are bad too, but those can never see play regardless, so the artillery is the only real downside that he has. Having 20% attack power bonuses in basically every fight is really good. He also has an okay CO power and a very strong super. They're really good for doing a big offensive, breaking through the enemy lines with your higher attack power and moving up super fast to catch them off guard. In Advanced Wars by Web though, I would say that his CO power is not very impressive, it kind of got an indirect nerf. In Advanced Wars by Web, unlike Advanced Wars 2, all CO powers give a generic 10% attack power bonus to everybody. But this didn't get added on to Max's CO power bonus for whatever reason, so he said exactly the same while a lot of other COs got stronger for some reason. Proportionally, his superpower wasn't hit as badly by the stealth nerf, so unless you need a +1 movement bonus desperately, I think it's usually better to save for his very strong superpower, and devastate the enemy with one giant push. Now, my opponent is playing as Eagle, perhaps my favorite CO. Eagle has an okay day-to-day, no weakness, and the best superpower in the game. Day-to-day his air units, which basically just means battlecopters in most games, have plus 15% attack and plus 10% defense. That's pretty good, and it makes them about on par with Max's. You can argue about whether 20% attack power is better than 15% attack and 10% defense for air units, because defense doesn't really help air units that much. I don't think it'll matter much in this map though, because this is not really an air map. He has the worst CO power in the game. I stand by my metaphor that using that CO power instead of saving for your super is kind of like getting hungry and eating your own leg. That superpower, getting a double move with every non-infantry unit, is game-winning. So Eagle's usual game plan is just to play fairly normally but defensively day to day, using his okay day-to-day bonus now and then, build up a huge fleet of vehicles and air units, and then just win with one superpower. That's what I did to Starduster, and that's what I can't allow my opponent to do to me this game. So, talking strategy here. One thing that I think about every time I look at a new map is, what are the things that player 1 can do better than player 2, and vice versa? On this map, player 2 has a really big advantage, and there's lots of reasons playing into that. Player 2 can scale up quite fast and get up vehicles early on and acquire some crucial early wins that way, on this vehicle-heavy map. But I thought there's one thing that player 1 can do better than player 2, and that is that player 1 can go out and grab this comm tower in the south. Now that comm tower is in player 2's strong side, and the strong side, weak side dynamic is extremely powerful on this map because of how close together the bases are. The one base side gets overwhelmed almost immediately if you try to fight conventionally. Several of the people complaining about this map talked about how, in their games, The strong sides both immediately overwhelmed the weak side, pushed the weak side back to their bases, and the game just became degenerate and silly from there. But it should be possible for me, if I do something a little bit odd, to get an infantry out to that comm tower and capture that before he gets there. And it won't be easy to hold it, but if I can hold it, I'll have a crucial advantage over him. Most importantly, besides getting the attack bonus, the really important thing about this is that it won't let him stall. It will just be intolerable to him to have me have potentially both comm towers and him have none. No player will sit back and take that. Especially with me being Max, who can easily instant kill people with 40% attack bonuses at that point. After this game, I looked at several replays on this map and noticed that a lot of the high-level players do some of the same moves that my opponent did here, which I thought were pretty unusual when I first saw them. A lot of them actually delay capturing their base to get the nearby city first instead. This can allow an early APC without having the weak side infantry capture the nearby city first. Honestly, I'm not really convinced that it's worth the economic downsides, but my opponent is not alone in doing something like that by any means. He's in good company. He just doesn't do the APC. A lot of players advance their weak side infantry immediately to capture this middle city first. I think the main reason to do that is that it seems to be very common to build a recon on your strong side on turn 3. And so if you advance your infantry that fast, it can get the capture done and get behind cover before the recon shows up. I'm not certain that's worth it though, because with a 1-turn delay you could still accomplish that and get a little bit of money faster too. And in fact, the infantry that's just finished capturing might make good bait for the recon, then you can finish them off with a tank. Anyway, I'm rushing the comm tower, and I know with a certainty that I can capture it before he can possibly shoot me with a recon. After finishing this game, I saw a few replays of people doing somewhat similar things as Max, capturing both comm towers, but still actually losing. Getting the early comm tower is not my whole strategy, it's only part of it. It's not enough to just take the comm tower, you have to hold it. If you're going to try something like this, you must remember that you're fighting upstream on your opponent's strong side. So you're going to need a lot of tanks, and you're going to need them early. Otherwise, all I've accomplished is hurting my own economy by throwing away an infantry and having him not capture valuable properties. I think one reason that I've won all my games is that I have a really cohesive overall strategy every time, not just a few bits and pieces that don't work together. Anyway, I'm going to go right ahead and save up for a tank. I think that a tank on your weak side is a very strong opening in this map, particularly because it's so common for the opponent to do a recon on their strong side, and the tank on the weak side is the natural counter to that. Now I had watched a couple of my opponent's replays, and knew that my opponent likes to delay his vehicles to get up more infantry faster and expand his economy. Which I can understand, I've done that in my last few games. But it's also going to make him extra vulnerable to this kind of aggression on my part. I wasn't counting on it, I knew that even if he got an early recon I would still be able to capture that comm tower and get away with everything. But it would help if he doesn't get an early recon. So I get the comm tower, all is well so far, and I expect to get shot by a recon on his next turn. When that happens, all I have to do is retreat back to the forest while breaking up the new tank that I'm about to build. Notice, by the way, that my weak side capture route was a little bit different than his, even aside from sending out that guy to get the comm tower early on. In particular, the infantry who captured my back city went to capture my northern city next, which is very movement efficient. He's going to have to waste some turns I didn't have to waste. Alright, so my opponent now spots me in the south, but my opponent made a micro misplay. The replay is bugged and doesn't show ambushes properly. But the opponent took the southern infantry and moved it toward the comm tower first, from the west, getting ambushed and blocking off the opponent's other infantry so it can't actually attack me this turn. Movement order and precise directions matter quite a lot in this game sometimes. I always think pretty carefully about that. I'm not surprised, by the way, that the opponent doesn't seem to be going for the northern comm tower. People usually don't arrive there that fast. Now I will admit, when I was going through all the different possible builds my opponent could do and how I would counter them, I did not expect an anti-aircraft gun as part of the mix. I was expecting a tank, but it won't really make a big difference as you'll actually see. Anyway, as I'd hoped and indeed expected, I'm going to get that northern comm tower too because he just has nothing up there to see me. The comm tower is already paying dividends as I get a great first strike there. My economy is a little bit weak, which is my main problem right now, but the difference isn't as bad as it could be because my capture route was a little bit better. Now my tank position might seem pretty strange, but I thought fairly carefully about it. This is as far forward as I can go, while being safe from a first strike if he has a tank in that forest, which is what I'm mostly worried about at this point. The fact that he didn't have an early recon makes me think that he had an early tank, and therefore I want to make sure that I am safe from one of those. The lack of immediate recon aggression also takes some pressure off the south, allowing me to get myself a recon in the north to harass him instead. If he had attacked me in the south with a recon, I actually would have base skipped this turn to get a second tank in the south. I had thought through how things could go and I was pretty confident that would be the right move under those circumstances. This top base is not that crucial anymore. There's nothing much to capture in the area. And it's my strong side anyway, where there's some room for error. There is no room for error on the bottom. I can't be short on tanks there. Anyway, without an early vehicle, he is in a predicament. I got the first strike, I have the defensive terrain, I have the comm tower bonus, so it's not a great fight for him. But this is what I mean about him being compelled to fight. He can't just sit there and let me have that comm tower. He can't have his infantry sit around and do nothing either. It reminds me of a fun moment from Roman history, actually. During one of Rome's most pointless civil wars against their Italian allies, General Marius, one of the best generals of the ancient world, was up against a much stronger army. The other general taunted him, saying, "Hey Marius, if you're such a good general, come fight a battle." Marius responded very intelligently, "If you're a good general, make me. I am making my opponent fight a battle at the time and place of my choosing here." He does a pretty smart move here and goes for massive numbers of tanks, but I'm expecting that. He'll have a quantity advantage, but I should have a pretty good quality advantage, and I can probably engineer first strikes and terrain bonuses on my side. And in these early turns, where we don't have that much money regardless, he won't even have that big a numbers advantage against me, really. And in the meantime, I'm forcing him to throw away units down here, which Eagle never wants to do, while not being able to counter my powerful recons up in the top and middle, which will just run riot unopposed. I'd also like to point out, for those who doubt this strategy, that even if he first strikes me, tank on planes, I'll come out behind on the first volley, but I'll come out ahead on the second volley when I return fire on my turn. Up north, unfortunately, I had some quite bad luck shooting his infantry with my recon. It was almost a guaranteed kill, so he's quite likely to be alive there, and hunting him down will delay my recon, unfortunately. I've talked pretty often before about how I don't really believe that much in recons. This map is an exception. It is just paved with roads and shoals, which means recons can go speeding along really well. There are also almost no well-placed mountains to use for scouting instead here, and lastly, there are a lot of places where one recon can watch a whole bunch of contested cities at the same time and police them all. This game, of course, is also the opposite of the previous one, where when fighting against Starduster when he was max, I didn't want to use recons because I knew his tanks could instant kill my recons. The shoe is on the other foot now. He can't kill my recons in one shot, and I can kill his easily. So I take out a lot of his infantry, and I stay on that comm tower. I want to occupy that with a unit every single turn. It doesn't really matter which unit, I just need to have somebody there, because as long as somebody is there, it's really easy for me to replace them with a fresh unit every single turn, drive up a fresh tank and attack with that terrain bonus. A tank that will also let me watch anything being put into the woods too, which is great. I'm building a second recon with the general idea that one of them will move downward and help scout for my tanks in the south, while the other one will stay and mostly do the harassing work. But we'll see how things actually unfold. Comparing our values right now, after he builds his units for this turn, he'll be about 10,000 value ahead of me, which is pretty normal for this turn on this map for player 1 compared to player 2. So you can see that going for that comm tower didn't really hurt me that much economically. Well, I was surprised to see an anti-aircraft gun there, but pretty happy. It would have been perfectly fine if he had a tank there instead, but this is worth even more money that he'll lose, so works out well for me. He does go for his own airport fairly early. I know this guy loves battlecopters, and of course he's playing his Eagle too, so I'm definitely expecting some of those to show up in a few turns. But air units are pretty easy to scout and counter on this map, I think. I think my opponent was very intelligent to build that artillery, by the way. One critic of this map said that artillery are useless on it. That person is dead wrong. There are definitely maps where artillery are better than they are in this one, but there are lots of good artillery spots on this map, especially with how defensive you often need to get around your weak side, or when fighting for the comm towers, as is going to happen here. In fact, my biggest worry at this point was that he already had an artillery in that forest. But that's a risk I've got to take. I go for it and I demolish his anti-air. On the northern front, I do not push toward his base, that would be suicide. I start shifting south instead, revealing his infantry, killing it, and moving my recon to work and attack more of his guys on future turns. I've seen a lot of people have the infantry that captures this city go for this airport. That is really movement inefficient, and I don't recommend that. I think my capture route here is more efficient than that by a good deal. And I station my new tank where he covers the infantry and the tank, and where he's almost certainly out of sight of the enemy. This infantry here stands ready to fight any infantry of his, or to just be another body occupying the comm tower if need be. As I said, unless he has an artillery threatening to push me off, I want to keep a person on that comm tower every single turn. So I have the terrain bonuses, and he doesn't, and he can't start a recapture. As I mentioned before, my top infantry are really not that useful right this second, so it would not have been that bad to have to base skip one turn up there to get another tank in the south. But hey, luckily I didn't have to make that trade-off. In my weak side, of course, I keep going for more tanks. After this game, I watched a replay where I saw a Max do a similar strategy, get both comm towers, and still badly lose to Eagle. And the main reason was simply not getting enough tanks on the weak side. Without a lot of tanks, this whole strategy is completely pointless. You'll just get run over and lose the comm tower again immediately. Getting a comm tower might feel nice, but it's not useful unless you get to use it for a lot of important fights. Okay, so see him drive his artillery up. On the one hand, it's a dangerous unit, on the other hand, at least I know where it is. And here we see both the power and limitation of this strategy. Even with the first strike, his first tank is going to lose that fight. And I might add, he had an okay luck roll there too. But even with all my bonuses, the second tank is overwhelming. I need to have lots of other tank backup to maintain the pressure here. He also made a small but crucial tactical blunder here, which is that he put himself in range of my new tank on my base. I mentioned how there are almost no safe spots in this map because the bases are so close together. What he needed to do is attack from the south and the west while pulling his anti-aircraft gun back. It's worth noting, by the way, that even with my massive max bonuses and comm tower bonuses, my recon would barely scratch his one in that city, because recon base damage against other recons is so low that it's not even worth attacking most of the time. Now, as you can see, one downside of my strategy is that my top recons were produced slowly, and therefore will be kind of late in stopping him getting to these middle properties. Having bad luck against the infantry who survived that first shot slowed me down too, of course. But I knew about that trade-off when I chose this strategy, and I think it was worth it for me. This is a great economic turn for me, and I know at this point I'm going to start winning economically soon. And militarily, you can just see the power of these 40% bonus attack tanks. That first strike is just deadly. His second tank goes down too, and my 1 HP 1 can finish off his 1 HP 1. This is where the one difference would have come in if he'd built another tank instead of that anti-air. If he had done that, my 1 HP tank would have died. But I think you can see he'd still be in catastrophic trouble down here, so the anti-air didn't really sink him. It just saved me one 1 HP tank, which is nice but not really decisive. I debated having the infantry stand on the tower, but I know he has an artillery pointed at it, so I better stay back for the time being, not give him a free hit. I can't throw a full HP unit away down there. Speaking of the importance of having more units down there, I built another tank too. I did consider building an MD tank down there, by the way, skipping a base up top to do so. MD tanks are really good on your weak side on this map, especially his max. But I just wiped out his tanks and he has no artillery, so it's not a great time for an MD tank. On the top front, I tried to occupy all the good terrain and give him no easy targets. If his recon comes out into a road to attack me, I will shoot it at that point with my recon. I don't expect him to do that though, so I build a tank up there to hunt it down. Both of us, as you can see, went really heavy on the southern front and really light on the north front, which of course is expected with this strategy. So it's his turn, and he and I both know that he's in a predicament at this point. I know that he can't have that many vehicles unaccounted for. He knows he doesn't really have any secrets left. His infantry in the middle are going to get massacred, he's behind on unit quantity and quality, and he's just out of ways to deal with the two towers.
The world is changing. Who now has the strength to stand against the union of the two towers? Together, my lord, we shall rule this Middle Earth.
So, I wasn't too surprised when my opponent resigned this turn. A very fast win here though, less than 9 full turns in fact. I knew the strategy was a pretty high risk, very high reward one when I started it, so I wasn't too surprised by that. And the plan went off without a hitch. I was ready for every contingency that came up. As I said, getting both comm towers was not in itself enough to win. It was a part of a bigger strategy. I saw several replays after this where a max player got both comm towers but still got demolished. Paying attention to the details of unit positioning and how I moved them also helped me a good deal in this match too. Anyway, after those last few defensive matches, it was nice to get back to my natural playstyle of being in everybody's faces all the time. And I always enjoy showing off unusual strategies. Until next time, have a great day everyone.